Hello everyone, I'm Erica Strother, Community Specialist at ICMI, and today we're going to have a friendly little debate. So I'm joined by Al Hopper of Citibank. How are you, Al?
Doing great, and yourself?
Doing well. Thanks for joining me this morning.
Absolutely.
I'm also joined by Justin Robbins, who works here at ICMI with me. How are you, Justin?
I'm great, Erica. How are you?
Doing well, thanks.
Good.
So you guys are both faithful participants in our weekly ICMI chat. It's our weekly tweet chat that takes place every Tuesday at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. And every now and then one of these chats will kind of spark a little bit of a debate. And sometimes it's tough to keep the debates going in 140 characters or less, which is why we're here today. So I think a couple of weeks back, as we were chatting about the multi-channel contact center, we got into a little bit of a debate around metrics and what's a contact center conversation about metrics unless first contact resolution comes up. So Al Hopper made the comment that FCR is not always possible, and then that started to kind of had a friendly debate was going back and forth. So wanted to spend a little bit of time today expanding on that conversation. So you kind of surprised some people, Al, when you said that FCR is not always possible. So do you want to explain yourself for a minute? Tell us what you meant, and then we'll give Justin an opportunity to respond.
Absolutely. Thank you. And so what I was looking at is really for social media FCR when it comes to customer service. There's some industries it's just not possible, at least not for every conversation. There are some conversations you can definitely do FCR with. What I look at is some of the regulated industries, banking and healthcare. We have to, and working in banking, we have to be very careful of protecting our clients' privacy. So a lot of the conversations, especially if they're account related, have to be taken offline. We have to revert or deflect to another channel. And so FCR in the most accepted sense, first contact resolution, it's just not possible. And I was watching a webinar offered by United Healthcare. They're even more restricted using social media. They can't even respond acknowledging that the person they're talking to is a client. They have to be very careful that they can be very general, and then they have to deflect to the phones, even more so than what we have to do in banking.
Okay. Justin, your thoughts?
Awesome, and I'm feverishly writing notes down here. So I think there's a couple really fair points that Al's making, and I think the first place that I want to go is when we're talking about first contact resolution. The reason we can't benchmark ourselves against other companies, both inside and outside of our industry, is it first needs to come down to what we're defining as that first contact. And the first thing that I'm hearing Al say is that there are certain processes and certain procedures that are restricting our ability to necessarily do it in the channel that they reached us. So to me, that's saying if as an organization or as a even just a segment of the business, if we're saying we want to measure the first contact, if we know process is requiring that to escalate, whether it be to another tier or to another channel, it's really coming down to us to saying, do we want to consider, if we know we can't handle it in this channel, we have to move the customer. That's not saying we didn't handle it in the first contact. It's just saying that the first contact might extend beyond how they came to us. And so, to me, I think there's 2 points to be made there. One, if we really want to say, if they reached us and we can't serve their need in that first point of contact, we can define that and say we didn't reach first contact resolution. I would say there's a benefit to that if we could put a process or a procedure that would allow us to improve that possibly in the future. Because if we look at the whole point of first contact resolution in the first place, the reason we measure it is because it's kind of a no-brainer. Being able to have your issue resolved on a first contact means it's easier to do business. If it's easier to do business, there have been studies that say that it increases my likelihood to be satisfied or my likelihood to continue to do business with you. So the reason for the metric is all good and well, but I think, and the point that I was making when we were having this conversation initially is really we need to look at how we're defining that. If I call in and I just zero out in the IVR just so I can get to somebody, it's not the organization's fault that we didn't achieve first contact resolution. And if that agent can successfully escalate or move that customer to the person that can resolve the concern, in my personal opinion, we've still achieved FCR, even though we didn't do it in that true first contact.
Yeah, that's a great point. The definition of first contact. I know also with social teams, there's different schools of doing it. You can have the social media team who can then, within the team, pick up the phone and call the client. And then you've got some social media teams that work as a concierge for other departments. They gather as much information as they can, and then they fire off an email or escalate it within an internal process for the team that's going to be doing the solving, contact that client. So again, like you said, absolutely, you really have to define what you're going to have as first contact resolution. I think the biggest change from a traditional metric to a social metric is that cutoff. You know, a traditional is, to your point, first time a client picks up the phone and makes contact, whether it's through a direct dial, an IVR, or what have you. With us, especially in the regulated industries, you know, the first contact is, okay, I can't help you socially, but I can still help you within my team. So that's still, to your point, first contact. But I think that, you know, because there are some things that even, say, banking can do. You tweet to @AskCity, where's the nearest ATM to where I'm at? We can solve that socially. That's nothing to do with your private personal information. But you tweet to me and say, hey, I can't get logged in. Is there something wrong with my account? We can't do anything with that socially other than deflect you to the phones within my team and then solve your issue there. So is that still first contact resolution? I think because it can go both ways. I think that's where that metric is really starting to get hair split. Because, yeah, first contact resolution traditionally is one tweet, one answer resolution. But the new model is one tweet, one deflection, perhaps, solve the answer. And then what happens when you've got a really complicated issue that requires just the first contact but other follow-up? You know, is that still first contact resolution if the same person's dealing with that escalation?
Yeah, you know, and there's a couple things that then play into this that it really gets complicated, and this is why first contact resolution. It's, you know, I think we've been having these conversations now for at least 10 years around this topic of first contact resolution, and we're still well, it's sometimes this, maybe it's this. You know, it's more complicated, you know, to that point. So, you know, first we figured out, yeah, it's going to be defined by organization a little bit differently, right? And that's going to depend on a number of things. You know, we haven't even really thought into this process of how do you actually effectively measure that. I just had a conversation last week. Somebody said, well, what if they visited our website and they couldn't find the answer there, and so they have to call in? We've never thought about that before. So that means that all this time we've been measuring first contact resolution, we really haven't been doing it?
Right.
So my question back to them, and really my question back to not just you, Al, or really anybody who's watching this, is the whole point of measuring anything, first contact resolution, average, whatever, is what are we doing with that information once we've measured it? Mm-hmm. And so to my point earlier, if it's something we can't do anything about, if the fact of the matter is if a customer tweets into us and the thing they tweeted about us we can't resolve in a tweet, it's not going to change, we're going to have to escalate it, are we doing more harm than good by saying, oh, we haven't hit FCR in social, if the reality is that's something we never could achieve, we can never do it. So what I really challenge organizations is not just to look at how you're defining that first contact resolution, but really say, where are the places that we can do something about it? Because the point in measuring it and trying to achieve it is about process improvement, it's about efficiency, it's about making it easier for our customers. And so, you know, after we've defined it, then we really need to be effectively measuring it and know what we're doing with that information and put it into some action items.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like you said, it's going to have to depend on each individual organization and what they consider either FCR or what even an acceptable level is, you know, an SLA for first contact. You know, knowing that not everything is going to be able to be solved the very first contact, and not even considering the self-help issue that you brought up, which that was a great monkey wrench when I saw that. And so, you know, I think the measurable has to have some kind of degree of difficulty. You know, you're not going to be able to achieve 100% FCR every time. You know, so understanding that as a leader, you, I think, have to create an acceptable SLA. You know, everyone talks about SLA in terms of how many tweets we respond to and how quickly. But I think you have to have an acceptable limit for other metrics as well, you know, FCR included, because not everyone's going to be able to be done. And so, you know, like you said, we might not even know if it is truly FCR or not. They might have been on a self-help forum and not found what they needed before they came to us.
Yeah, and you know, that's with metrics, you know, one of the things we talk about is, you know, certain metrics we have a lot of data on, and it's easy for us to be able to measure something. Like if I wanted to see, you know, the average amount of time that my agents are spending handling a contact, I can run report and be inundated with data. The challenge with FCR, and to your point about being able to say that we 100% achieve it, is we've got a couple different perspectives we need to look at, because you know, I see some organizations, they measure FCR just by a survey question, asking the customer, was your issue effectively resolved today? Customer says yes, doesn't realize that the person they were communicating with was just really good at pretending like they knew what they were doing. 3 days later, they find out, you know what, they didn't change my address, they didn't move this information. And so we have to start looking at different perspectives. We have to get that customer piece. Were they satisfied? And did they feel good about the contact? We have to look internally. You know, did that agent do what they were supposed to? Was the information accurate? Was you know, everything done that should have been? Did we prevent, you know, the future contacts as well? You know, that's another thing that ties into FCR is next issue avoidance, right? How do we anticipate and move those things? So, you know, it really is within each organization, they need to have a good understanding what they're going to call it, what they're going to do with it, and then tying into that, what are the ways that we're able to measure it? Because some of that piece, you know, some organizations can track a customer, you know, embed a cookie on their computer and know, oh, we know that, you know, Jane was on our website. We saw she was on these pages. That resulted in her doing a click to chat. And then so some, you know, there is technology robust enough to kind of run the analytics and see where that customer moves. But realities for a lot of organizations, like that's not the case. And even then, we're never going to get a 100% clear picture of our customer because we don't know. Maybe they were on our website. Maybe they did something to try to resolve the issue or to try to contact us. And it's always going to be a moving target with a lot of pieces. That getting it 100%, you know, I would really challenge anyone to say that they could 100% of the time measure 100% first contact resolution.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from my perspective, I would love to be able to chart, like you said, through a cookie or through whatever CRM tools you're using, you know, were they at the website? Were they at the app even? You know, because like with City, we have a really awesome mobile app that a lot of clients can do a lot of self-help with. And, you know, but sometimes something just doesn't look right and that they've got to go to us. So, you know, what is the definition of FCR? I think until your company and your brand, your service comes up with a sufficient enough definition, you know, and again, going back to, you know, United Healthcare, watching that webinar that they did, it's not even a possibility to consider first contact resolution in social unless you expand the definition from first contact through contact resolution. And maybe it's assigned to that same agent, and the agent overall is the contact. And then you could say, okay, we can maybe consider FCR through social. You know, or if you do have an organization that concierges from social to an internal team, you know, is that first contact the contact to resolution, or is it just that very first tweet? You know, because you know, looking at some of the conversations I've had with other teams outside of City, especially that use the concierge method, they essentially could, again, not use FCR as a metric unless you expanded the definition to first contact through resolution, perhaps. Because instead of being first contact resolution, just not a possibility with the service model that they use, or first contact through resolution, because it does take that extra escalation step.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think the things that we've really kind of hit on here today are the fact that it's not a one-size-fit-all model, right? People need to define what that first contact is internally. We really need to take a look at what are we ultimately doing with the information that we're going to get out of this, but then we also need to know that this is one of those things that we're going to be hard-pressed to get a clear picture of what that end-to-end experience is, and so we need to measure it from both sides. We need to measure it from the customer side, and we need to measure it internally, and even then, right, it's never going to get us that 100% picture. But what we need to be focused on is how can we use this to improve, because ultimately that's what FCR is about. It's about making it easier for our customers, because we know when we do that, they're going to be happier. They're going to want to continue to do business with us.
Yeah, and then that brings us into the new buzzword of customer convenience and customer effort.
Absolutely.
So I think that's another conversation for another day.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned customer effort, and Justin mentioned next issue avoidance, which brings me kind of to the closing question. Do you guys see a shift away from such a strong focus on FCR and more organizations focusing on things like customer effort and next issue avoidance?
Justin, you want to start?
Absolutely. Thank you. So Erica, I'm gonna take that back to then. What are we gonna do with the metric? We need to. There are a lot of things that there's always have been, and there will continue to be an emergence of things that we can measure in the contact center. So what I think is important is that as organizations, we focus on what are our big initiatives for the coming year. There's really only going to be 3, maybe even 5 things that we can focus on as an organization to improve. And so depending on where we're at with meeting our customers' expectations, depending on how well we're currently fulfilling that idea of first contact resolution, those things are going to dictate whether or not we want to focus on next issue avoidance. If I feel that my agents are doing a really good job addressing what's happening, but they're not anticipating future needs, they're not going above and beyond the way that we want them to, then maybe that's where I'm going to focus on. For me to sit here and say that absolutely yes, everybody should just abandon or add on to what they're doing and start looking at additional metrics. I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say we really need to focus, because we are not doing a good enough job of addressing the metrics that we're measuring today. So I think we need to tighten the belt a little bit, really focus on the things that matter the most, and then align that with metrics that are going to get us the information that we can use to really drive change in our organizations. That's what I feel is that what we need to do, and the metrics we use to do that are going to depend on what's important to us as an organization, to our employees, and to our customers.
Yeah, I mean, I agree wholeheartedly. Understanding that we are trying to work for the customer's resolution, and understanding that that's the ultimate goal. Trying to figure out which metrics to use is always going to be a challenge, especially in a multiple contact situation or a multiple channel servicing model. First contact resolution, great for phones. If you consider, if you discount perhaps the IVR, but you look at the conversation of the agent, was the agent on the phone able to solve the issue? FCR is a great metric, but the channel has to be understood as well. Social is just not going to be a 100% FCR type channel. I challenge, like you, I challenge anyone to create the ultimate model for that. There might be some kind of niche business, let's just support that can do it. But for a lot of industries, it's just not going to be possible. And so, to your point, we absolutely do need to decide how much of the customer effort is involved, and perhaps that might be the right shift for a social channel. Is the customer effort? Do they have to first go to the phones, then to the website, or website then phone, and then social? Because we all know the majority of people right now are using social as a last chance effort. They haven't been able to be satisfied in any way, shape, or form, and so that's why they're going out to social. They don't understand yet that social is a good first contact channel, because a lot of times the social teams are escalation teams, and so they have the opportunity to be able to solve most issues using social as the first contact or the channel of choice.
Great points.
Yeah. Well, this has been a really fun conversation. We should do this more often.
Absolutely.
I'm in.
Yeah.
So, to those of you watching, if you want to get in on the action, feel free to join us every Tuesday, 1 o'clock Eastern Time. You just need to use the hashtag ICMIChat to join in. This next chat on June the 10th will be focused on customer experience metrics. So if you're into metrics, be sure to join us for that. And I'll look forward to talking to both of you gentlemen again soon.
Thank you very much. It's been great.
Yeah, have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.